Okay, well, welcome everyone again. I'm so excited to have everyone here this evening. For those of you who are joining me live, I'm actually streaming this across a couple platforms, and I'm also recording this particular presentation. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Shantae Moore. I'm a certified financial educator and I hold many other certifications and titles, but overall, I teach people how money works. And I'm really excited about this particular presentation tonight because it's a new company that I just partnered with, which really helps, which will be a resource to all of you, my clients, my contacts, when it comes to how do we fix our debt problem. In my 15 years of working with clients one-on-one, a lot of folks are just like, look, Shantae, I can't even save money because I have so much debt. I want to get rid of it first before I can even really think and focus on anything else. And in the past, the only thing that I could really offer them was like a debt snowball method, like a method of how to pay off their debts as quick as possible. But really, I didn't have any solutions to where how can we right now, how can we, how can we actually eliminate or reduce some debt so that we can free up money right away so that I can give them recommendations to save, to invest, to purchase life insurance, whatever it was. So this new company that I started working with called MPowering America, they have some really cool services. I'll tell you right now, I don't work for them. I'm not the expert. They do give me the resources, which I'll share with you today. But I encourage you take notes because I started going through this information a couple of weeks ago. And even me, I learned a lot on my own just from the couple presentations from tonight's presentation. Then I have another one coming up in a couple of weeks in November. I was like, wow, I didn't even know this stuff. So if you find that this is something that you're interested in probably applying for yourself, the next step would be for you and I to get on the phone with MPowering America, and then they'll go through all their services, everything that they offer to see what would be the best solution for you. Because what I'm going to share today are 5 different options that you can look at when it comes to getting rid of your debt. So I'll share that information toward the end, but however you reach and receive this webinar information, whether it was someone shared it with you or that I invited you directly, you all should know how to get in touch with me. But again, so tonight's conversation is 5 steps to swiftly eradicate unsecured debts. And I want to start off by saying that this can be a very sensitive subject to some people. I 100% recognize that. But the one thing I also want to say is that I hope with this information, you'll see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You'll see that there's some hope and that there's some possibilities that you could possibly pursue to, have practical steps of what you can do to address your debt. And that's what I really hope you take away from tonight's message. So to start, let's just look at a quote that you might have heard before. You weren't born to just pay bills and die. So this conversation is really about alleviating debt. And it's really about how do we alter our financial future. It's about changing your destiny from one of limitations because of the debt that someone might have to how do we get to a position of having unlimited potential and, more importantly, financial independence. So this is the theme that that I'll be keeping in mind as we go through these 5 options that this company offers. So consider this. I think most folks can agree that having a good relationship with money is an essential life skill. Years of research with thousands of American adults proves that your finances, whether you're in surplus or deficit, that your finances will impact your mental and physical health. In other words, whatever your level of wealth is, it can determine your level of health as well. And one thing we also know is that how people manage money is based on what they know and how they behave. A recent study here shows that 1/3 of the average American adult's income is going to paying debt. And you really think about that 1/3. So if you make $100, 33 of those dollars are going towards debt. And instead of paying their debt down, actually taking as much money and trying to pay it off as quick as possible, statistics show that 30% of people actually only pay the minimum balance on their credit card bills. And why is that? Because that's typically what credit card companies only require of us, is just to pay the minimum. So when we look at these statistics here, they do paint a picture of the economic crisis that pretty much 99% of the American population actually endures every day. Number one, when Americans have no clue what interest rates they're paying. I can't tell you how many people they're like, oh yeah, I got a $10,000 credit card, but they have no idea what the actual interest rate is on that. The main thing that I mentioned earlier is that when folks have a lot of debt, it prevents them from saving, because they just don't have the extra money to put into a retirement account or to do what they need to do. And then also, we know that folks don't know how to create a financial plan for their families. We just don't know what we don't know. We prioritize like, oh, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. And we really don't know like what things should we focus on when it comes to the extra money that we have. And then overall, when we know that 76% of those interviewed, they could not answer 5 out of 6 questions about basic finance. So when we look at all these statistics and the lack of financial literacy, that creates a recipe for financial disaster to implode at any time. So I want you to ask yourself, I want to ask a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer it out loud here, but do you find yourself struggling with some type of financial crisis? And if so, do you have any idea how you could turn that crisis into success? And again, I want to have portray a message of hope tonight, because a lot of folks are dealing with these different financial crises. And that's why I really partner with this company, Empowering America. Their mission is to help 12.5 million people, which is actually the population of Los Angeles and New York combined. They want to help 12.5 million people become debt free for life. And I believe that's truly an incredible mission that's really helping people all across the nation. And the way that they're doing this is by using 2 powerful tools. Number one, they want to educate folks about what their options are. And if you know me, I do a lot of workshops, I do a lot of teaching, and I do a lot of it for free because I'm so passionate about teaching financial literacy topics. And this company, Empowering America, is as well. But most importantly, they give you practical strategies that you can start using right away to relieve your debt immediately also. So I truly believe that when we're talking about debt and, getting rid of debt, that's just one part of the journey, because our journey, it really begins and ends with financial literacy and discovering, the concepts that can help eliminate debt, that can help you increase cash flow, that can help you build wealth, that, you want to put strategies in place that can have not only immediate, but lasting power in your entire lifetime. And anyone can really transform how they think about money. I truly believe it's possible to go from a place of frustration and, despair to a position of confidence and hope. I could say, even though I'm blessed to know what I know and to do what I do, I'm not where I want to be financially, even myself. My goals just keep getting bigger and bigger. But I know the one absolute thing that I cannot, without a doubt is that whether how much money I have now or any money that I come to in the future, I'm 1,000% confident of what I need to do with it. I'm 1,000% confident of what accounts I need to open. Where do I put my investments? All those things. And so it doesn't matter about how much you have. It's about what confidence do you have in your financial skills to make strategic and wise decisions with your finances. And if you're on this webinar, if you're watching the replay, you want to be educated so that you can be confident and wise in the future as well. So let's talk a little bit about the banking and credit systems and how do they create, these rules when it comes to us, consumers taking on debt or, applying and qualifying for loans. So first of all, banking and credit systems in America and really worldwide are massive in size and scale. And to be crystal clear, banks and credit card companies, they want you to be ignorant. They want you not to pay attention to your debt because that's how they make their money. Because whenever you owe money, whether it's a large amount or a small amount, the credit and banking industry is designed to keep you in debt. The industry loves loaning you money. They love loaning us money because as long as you can make the payments, they will be happy to keep giving you more and more lines of credit because they make money off the interest and fees that you're paying them to get that money. So when we think about, okay, I can get as much debt as possible, right? We really want to think about, well, what 5 choices does a consumer have to alleviate excessive or what we call unpayable debt because of unforeseen hardship? Because I would say for most folks, I mean, I would think most of us, we're not necessarily just digging a debt hole on purpose. Like probably have student loans. We probably had emergencies. I remember I was 18 and didn't have an income, and the credit card company thought it was smart to give me a credit card. Why do credit card companies do that? Again, because they want us to be ignorant. They know that an 18-year-old doesn't know any better. But most people get into debt mostly because of unforeseen hardships. They just don't have money to take care of things that come up. And so when we look at, well, how can we become debt free? We really want to look at the options of how can we come to a goal where we can minimize or eliminate debt, and to improve or renew our credit scores. But one thing you should know before I start going through these 5 choices is that every single option is different. They all have their own pros and cons. And what I want you to walk away tonight is to get educated and to figure out, okay, which option works best for me, because everybody's situation is completely different. So when we look at the options we have here, the first is, to file bankruptcy. That's a common choice. It's a phrase that people frequently consider as a viable option. How did that come about? So back in 1898, there was a set of federal laws that came out in 1898, and then they were solidified with the Supreme Court ruling in 1934 that was designed to offer debtors a fresh start. And we'll discuss the upsides and downsides in a moment of bankruptcy. And another debt relief option is to consolidate your debt by refinancing your mortgage or just getting a consolidation loan. We'll look at that too. But I want you to keep in mind that there are less drastic options available that can reduce your debt more effectively and in less time than filing bankruptcy or getting a consolidation loan or refinancing your mortgage. You can enroll in either a validation program, an assumption program, or a settlement program. Now, these programs, that the last 3 that are listed here, these are less familiar choices to most people, but all 3 can be very effective depending on what your debt scenario is. And if you're facing unpayable debt, or if you're feeling overwhelmed by so many options here, don't worry, just take a breath. This is what we do at Empowering America. That's the whole reason why I partner with them, because they will educate you and again, give you the options and see, well, which option will work better for you. So again, feel free to screenshot any of this stuff. I will send the recording if you want it. But I do want you to start thinking like, as you learn this information on the next couple of slides, feel free to type into the chat any other questions that might come up also for you. So before I go into the 5 options, I do want to set the table by saying that, first of all, as I said, all 5 of those options, they each have their own pros and cons. However, there are 3 rules, there are 3 foundational rules that apply to all of those options. So before you consider which choice is right for you, it's critical that you understand these 3 foundational rules. So the first rule is that each choice is unique. So in other words, each of those 5 choices use completely different functions and methods to get rid of your debt. It's really comparing apples to oranges. They're totally different in their approaches. Rule number 2 is that each choice requires about 3 years to complete. So yes, 3 years. They're all different paths, but they all have about the same 3-year time frame to actually work. And I know you're probably thinking like 3 years, Shantae, come on now. But look, that's just the hard reality. Like when you're trying to do this stuff legally in the right way, it takes time. There's a process of alleviating debt, and it takes time, but it is doable. So I'm just being very real. Don't expect that you'll see results in the first month or two. In fact, you probably won't really see much visible progress in the first 6 months. So I want to, let's set realistic expectations. But again, it's a doable process. And rule number 3 is that each choice will impact your credit score. So for all of the choices available, you should have the expectation that you will take a hit to your credit. No one exits any type of debt program. Nobody walks away from a bankruptcy or even a consolidation loan with a better score, a better credit score. You just really have to simply ask yourself, what do you want more? Do you want more? Do you really want the debt relief and the freedom for the debt, or do you care more about having an excellent credit score? That's really the priorities that you have to weigh. So I would say, as I talk about these options, don't worry about your credit score. Don't obsess over that. That's not what we're here to focus on. Instead, let's focus first on how to become debt-free, because living debt-free is totally a different way of life that a lot of folks have not lived yet. Our credit scores, they will rise, they'll go up, they'll go down. But for now, we want to concentrate on the debt elimination as our first priority. So let's just unpack the 5 choices, starting with the path of bankruptcy, because bankruptcy, again, is more popular and very, very common. So just like all the other choices, bankruptcy has its ups and downs. In the case of bankruptcy, there can be some serious fallout that can result. But at the end of the tunnel, again, there's light at the end, so don't panic. But I just want to take a couple slides just to teach you about the different types of bankruptcy options that there are, because you can choose from having a Chapter 13 bankruptcy or a Chapter 7. And I want to just explain how do these different bankruptcy options work and the ultimate, result that they can bring about for you. So Chapter 13 is a bankruptcy proceeding in which the courts supervise and approve a reorganization of a debtor's finances. It's an option that's available to anyone, to any individual, to married couples, to self-employed business owners, and then also to unincorporated business owners. So a Chapter 13 reorganization, what it does is it requires that the debtor, that's you. Sorry, I guess I have an accent, so sometimes I don't say words right. The debtor develops and submits and adheres to a plan to repay any outstanding creditors within a 3 to 5 year time frame. So you're basically saying, I'm going to repay you. This is my plan to repay you over the next couple of years. And the repayment, though, it can be pretty substantial. And if most cases, it will use up, the courts will want to see what your disposable income is, meaning how much money do you have left over after paying all your basic expenses. They will pretty much use up 100% of your disposable income to go toward a Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan. So, and the damage from Chapter 13 bankruptcy, it really centers around 3 side effects. First, you will be evaluated, scrutinized, and controlled by a trustee that is appointed by the court. It's very unwelcoming, it's very uncomfortable, it's super intrusive, and it's something that you'll probably have to put yourself through for months until all your creditors are paid off or you run out of money, because most people just don't have enough money to pay the creditors. Second, you may be required to live on a monthly allowance determined by the court for a period of time, sometimes up to 5 years. And then finally, when you have a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, you'll very, very unlikely be able to take out any type of loan while in Chapter 13. In most cases, for about 4 to 5 years, you will not qualify for any type of loan. And then lastly, a Chapter 13 will remain on your credit report for 7 years. So it's not as easy as a lot of people make it think to be. It can be pretty damaging. But again, it's an option. I think it's something a lot of people hear about that's pretty popular. But let's talk about the Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So when most people actually hear the term bankruptcy, they're actually thinking about Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And this is the path where all of your debt is just completely wiped away, completely forgiven, or more formally, they discharge all your debt. And as long as you haven't filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy in the last 8 years, and you pass a means test, a financial test, just to see what your financials look like, you'll probably qualify. And so how that works is a trustee will be appointed by the courts to liquidate or send down your money, or spend down rather any money that you have. And sometimes they might even liquidate some of your property to pay off some of this debt. And then once all your assets have been exhausted, then the remaining debt is discharged. So then you're completely debt free. But again, that's a serious program to have to go through, and it does come at a significant price. So when we look at the damage of a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, there's no way around any of this stuff. First of all, your credit history will show the bankruptcy for a full 10 years. And that's 10 years on your credit report. You can't get it taken off. As you can imagine, having that bankruptcy will really hinder you from being able to take out loans for multiple years. That could include business and mortgage loans. And depending on your career field, bankruptcy might even disqualify you from certain types of positions of employment. I have heard people who, because of having bankruptcy, they couldn't qualify for a job. So again, very, very serious. So that's the minimum. Like I said, I'm not the bankruptcy lawyer expert, but I did want to just share a little bit about what bankruptcy options there are, because we hear 7 and 13, but it's like, which one do we actually deal with? Most people go through the route of having a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So now that we discussed bankruptcy, let's move on to choice number 2, which are loan consolidation or mortgage refinancing. So choice number 2 can be described as taking out a loan of money to pay off loaned money. So you get a new loan of money to pay off money that you were loaned in the past. And loan consolidation has become the go-to means of paying debt for millions of Americans. And if you just think about America, like, we're supposed to be the greatest country in the world, and we probably are. But when it comes to our debt and how we handle credit, America is just like a payment-centric nation. Like, everything is made on a payment, right? Like, we no longer make one-time purchases in cash to buy things. We live in like this credit-based property system. Everyone is paying interest on almost everything. That's cars, education, homes, furniture, phones, TVs, you name it, it's on some type of payment plan. Now, how do we get here? Like, how do we get to this payment-centric thinking? So in the early 2000s, homeowners really started to use home equity loans and mortgage refinancing as a way to pull cash out of their homes. And eventually the home equity loan frenzy, it just became like this mindless trend. Everybody was doing it. They was like, oh, I have equity in my house, I'll just draw it down and I'll get more money. And it really became the catalyst of a long habit of Americans just cashing out their mortgages to take on more debt for other items. And after about 8 years, around 2008, we entered in like a full-blown recession. The financial crisis happened from about 2008 to 2012. Trillions of dollars in pension money, in real estate value, in 401ks, savings accounts, all that money just overnight just dropped in value. 8 million people lost their jobs at that time. 6 million people lost their homes, and $5 trillion in pension money just disappeared over that time. I always tell folks, you have a pension, it's never guaranteed because of this, because of something like this. That's a whole nother webinar. But anyway, during this span of time, almost no one stopped to question the pattern of using loan money to pay off loaned, LOANED money. So then some more recent regulations actually came about to help home lending become more responsible, to have more restrictions, especially for new homeowners. But on the mortgage refinancing and home equity side, the new regulations actually didn't really apply to that idea of, refinancing. In 2019, 49% of homeowners increased their mortgage debt to the tune of $137.5 billion in cash out refinances. In 2020, last year, we saw cash out refinances, meaning people were going and refinancing on their mortgage. That increased to $153.8 billion in the first 3 quarters. In 2021, student loan debt reached $1.7 trillion. I'll tell you this, if we have another stock market crash, it will be because of the student loan debt. That's a Shantae theory. But anyway, in addition to the student loans debt increasing, credit card debt grew to $911 billion and consumer debt grew to $14 trillion. So since 2020, Americans have applied for over $89 billion in cash out funding to pay off other debts, all in an effort to reduce, their monthly payment expenses. And so, at the end of the day, it's becoming a problem. And the debt balances across the board are completely rising. So let's think about this idea of consolidation. Consolidation, yes, on one hand, it may lower a family's monthly payments. But what essentially is happening is that all their debts, the credit card here, the credit card there, the loan here, all they're doing is being collected and combined into a new loan with a new interest rate. And this means that they're really starting over a new plan to pay over that debt, but now they're extending out the term on paying that debt. And so it really creates a delusion in having people think like, oh, well, I consolidated, I'm paying a lower monthly payment. But really what you're doing is you have reduced monthly payments, but now you have a new extended loan. And it's really not freeing up any of your cash flow problems when it comes to your family's finances. And there are times, when consolidation loans are appropriate. However, again, many Americans live under the illusion that a refinance or consolidation loan is paying off debt, and that's just simply false. The better strategy is to instead increase your cash flow and maximize your income to explore processes that actually eliminate the debt. We don't want to just try to pay it off over a long time. We want to figure out how can we eliminate it. So I'm going to take a breath to take a drink. Does anyone have any questions they want to put in the chat? Or if you have any shared experiences that you want to share with the group here, or otherwise I'll just keep going. Okay, so far, and we got about 15 more minutes, maybe not that much. So far we've encountered choices, consolidation, bankruptcy, and as you learn, these have very, very major drawbacks. The next 3 choices, however, are completely different. These choices actually work in your favor instead of working for the creditors. So let's start with choice number 3, which is actually debt validation. So validation is the process of establishing the validity of a debt and the legality of a collector's debt collection processes. And if a collector fails, according to law, to validate a debt, or if they fail to follow a proper legal process, then the law automatically renders that debt uncollectible. So let's get into this a little bit more. So what the strategy does is it leverages federal laws that requires creditors to provide proof upon your request that they're collecting debt from the right person. Believe it or not, a credit card company who you have no relationship with could say, yeah, Shantae owes us $10,000. They'll put it on your credit report, and there's nothing that can stop them from doing that. So this validation idea, first of all, it actually requires creditors to prove that you actually owe them money. And secondly, they also have to prove that they're adhering to collection protocols that are designed to protect consumers. There are laws that that identify how consumers can have debts collected against them. So, and what happens is if the collectors can't provide proof that you owe them a debt, or that they have not violated those laws, the debt becomes invalid. And so through Empowering America, they actually work with an affiliate law firm who will contact the creditor, the collection agency, or if there's another law firm that's now handling the debt, that law firm will actually work with those individuals, and through discovery, they will request that proof. They'll ask, is there proof, what proof do you have that this debt is valid? And they'll also make sure that that there's a legal collection process that's being followed. Through this alone, I would say about 90% of the time, the debts are invalidated just through that alone. So the validation programs, yes, they will probably result in a temporary hit to your credit score, because the legal process during the program forces the creditors to remove, most of the derogatory marks that's associated with your debts. And any issues not within the purview of the program can be remedied also with credit repair programs that Empowering America offers at a later date. So either way, at the end, your credit scores can be corrected after the validation program is complete. So here's a bird's eye view of Empowering America's validation program. Again, I'm not going through every single detail on this slide, but as you can see, a couple of things I will highlight is that it does cover a wide variety of unsecured debts from an unlimited number of accounts. So again, feel free to screenshot this. I'll be happy to send you a copy of the slide after the presentation. And if, again, you want to talk to Empowering America, we can find out this validation actually makes sense for you. So I'll just pause a moment if anyone needs to get a screenshot. Okay, let's move on. So here's the fourth choice that can really help families reduce or eliminate debt. And this is a debt assumption program. Now, when I read this, I was like, well, what the heck is debt assumption? It didn't make any sense to me. I never heard of that. I heard of validation, but not assumption. So like validation, assumption attacks the actual problem, which is your debt balance and your monthly interest rate. But it takes a completely different approach than just actually validating that you owe the money. So first of all, it begins with an outside agency taking on the debt responsibility alongside you, the client, through a power of attorney. So it's like a third party who says, you know what, I'm going to take on Shantae's debt with her. And they're assuming that responsibility. And then that agency resubmits a new debt contract to your creditor. And so, like, let's say I had a credit card for $20,000. That agency is going to go to that credit card company and says, hey, this is a new contract that we want to establish around this $20,000 debt. And when that creditor either denies or breaks the contract, there's fines and penalties that can be assessed. And then over time, those fines will offset the original debt that the client ultimately owed. So they'll become more than, in my example, the $20,000. So ultimately, it becomes a choice for the credit card company. And what happens in general is that 90% of creditors, what they try to do is actually just sell your debt to a collection agency. And when this occurs, the creditors are now exposed to having to prove or validate those debts. And in most cases, the debts are either dismissed or deemed uncollectible. And then for the very small percentage of accounts, let's say 1 or 2 accounts out of every 100 accounts that are challenged, a negotiation can then be completed to minimize, that actual amount owed. So let's say the credit card company says, no, I'm not agreeing to your contract. Then you can get into a negotiation, scenario with that particular creditor or the collection agency. And most collection agencies are sensible enough to cut their losses. They'll either settle the debt, they'll either negotiate and settle, or they will forgive it entirely. So assumption is very unique. Very, very a very unique approach. I didn't learn about it until I started working with, started affiliated with this company. But here's an overview of the assumption program. As like the validation program, it covers a wide variety of unsecured debts, but they do have some different limitations. There's a cap on how much debt and the number of accounts that the program will accept. So, you can't go over there with $500,000 and say, yeah, take on this debt responsibility with me. But again, feel free to screenshot this and I can send a copy of the slide after the presentation, but that's in general what the assumption program looks like. Okay, so let's talk about this last program. And if assumption isn't a fit for you, choice number 5 may be the best and next option. And this is where we look at getting into some type of debt settlement program. So debt settlement is the process of negotiating with your creditors for a lower balance, or to have lower monthly payments or both. Essentially, a settlement agency will negotiate with your creditors on your behalf. And while they negotiate, they'll have you set aside money each month into a custodial savings account. And you'll use that money to pay off your debts as soon as they're settled. So settlement, though, it carries a risk that not all creditors will negotiate. Sometimes you try to negotiate with them and they just won't negotiate. But most creditors actually recognize that it's better to negotiate with you and try and settle rather than using their money trying to, send you to collection agencies, trying to get other lawyers involved to get the full balance. So instead of trying to get the full balance, they'll try to, negotiate and take a smaller settlement option. So while settlement is not necessarily the optimal solution, it does still achieve your main goal, which is to reduce your balance and to decrease your monthly payments. And it makes your unpayable debt more manageable. So it allows you to put more money aside. And now because you're not paying off as much, you can pay it off quicker. So, there we go. Okay. So here's our settlement program. Again, it's flexible. They have no maximum amount of debt or a limit on accounts that you can actually submit for settlement. Again, feel free to screenshot the slide. They do have a couple of parameters on there. Settlement, I would say the bankruptcy, the consolidation and the debt settlement is probably the more popular options that people have heard about. So I got a couple more slides to go through. So settlement, like I said, probably one of the more popular options. It's the last of the 5 choices that we really have when it comes to getting rid of your unpayable debt. And as you notice, there's really a lot of differences between bankruptcy and the consolidation compared to the final 3 choices. And that's what I really want to talk about is like, what are those differences? So bankruptcy and consolidation, they do alleviate your debt, but at a very high personal and financial cost. So with bankruptcy, you pay your debt balance in full or until you have nothing else to give, until you deplete all your assets. Consolidation offers short-term debt relief by lowering your monthly payments, but can extend your debt problem indefinitely. And creditors, they're more happy with either of these choices. The final 3 choices, the validation, assumption, and settlement, that's again where you turn the tables on your creditors by reducing or eliminating your actual debt obligation. And what's more, they don't involve liquidating your assets or extending out your debt term. They simply alleviate your debt burden while freeing up cash that you can use for now turning into wealth. Oops, keep advancing the slide, sorry. Okay, so in fact, these 3 choices, the last 3 choices, this is actually the foundation of what the services are that Empowering America offers. They compose 3 of the 4 strategies of VAST. Again, the validation, assumption, settlement, And then there's some also a tax debt assistance, which I don't get into on this particular presentation. But this is their system that they use to figure out how do they help you alleviate your unpayable debt and free up money so that you can actually save. So before we wrap up, I do want to, again, I do want to talk about credit score because as I mentioned, one of the 3 foundational rules is that your credit score will be impacted. And let's just have a little conversation about that, and it will bring some type of negative impact. And some people, they're like, you know what? I don't want my credit score affected. That's a super red flag. I 100% get that. I can totally relate why somebody would feel that way. And, if we think about it, a high credit score has really become a symbol of like, I have my act together, all my finances in order. That's not true. I can tell you that for sure. However, if you only focus on your credit score, you're really missing the forest for the trees. The real question is, what is more valuable? Do you want an excellent, 850 perfect score, or do you want financial freedom? That's really the question. Like, do I want to have this 850 score, but a lot of debt, or really have this financial freedom? But I mean, let's just consider them side by side. An excellent score, that's a massive asset, if you're in a position to take on more debt. When you have a great score, yes, it'll help you qualify for loans. It'll help you get the lowest interest rates on those loans. And then, like I mentioned, having a good credit score is kind of like a bragging, right? It makes you feel better of your financial position. But I would have to say, I don't believe that that's the path to having financial independence. And if you're already in debt, will that actually benefit you? Your goal is not to get into more debt, is to actually reduce or eliminate your debt, not increase it with more debts. So that's why eliminating unpayable debt, that really, in my opinion, that beats having an excellent credit score. When you're free from debt, having that freedom, it increases your cash flow. You can finally start saving and investing your money the way you really want to. And always remember, you can always repair your credit in the future after you've completed, any debt elimination program. And then also after you've established a solid financial foundation. So before we end today, I just want to share a real story of a client who made the choice to alleviate her debt, seemingly like, oh my God, I would never get out of this debt. So this is Patricia. She dreamed of just retiring. She was like, I just want to retire and stop working. But she had 2 problems. One, she had over $41,000 of debt. And 2, she was running out of time to start saving for her actual retirement. So she made a choice. She decided, you know what, I'm going to reduce my debt and use the extra money to save for my retirement. So she enrolled her debt in one of Empowering America's debt relief programs. It worked for her. Her monthly payments were cut over by half. They were reduced from a little over, it's actually $1,245 to $518. So she freed up about $700 extra dollars. And now she's using that towards achieving her savings goal. Her debt is gone now, and now she's able to really start focusing on her retirement goals. And making a change, I'll just say it starts with a choice. I don't know if any of these programs will work for you. They might be too out the box. Again, my job is just to share resources, but at least you know what options are there for you to alleviate your debt. And maybe you've thought about which choice sounds better for you. I don't know. Again, this isn't for me to determine, but if this is something that you want to figure out or even look at to see if it could be an option, again, what Empowering America does is they offer free phone consultations to get a good idea what your current debt scenario is, and they'll let you know whether validation or assumption or the settlement option would work best for you. That's not for me to determine. However, because I partner with them, I will be the one to schedule that phone call with you. I'll be there on the line because ultimately I hope that you also work with me to help you, use that extra money and really reach your financial goals. So I would just say, don't procrastinate. it never hurts to have those phone conversations and see what they offer. They'll let you know the fees, the costs, the expectations. They lay all that stuff out for you. So you can schedule an appointment. Actually, in the chat, I will put my contact information. So this is a general link that I use. So if this is something that you're interested in, you can schedule a 30-minute phone consultation with me. I'll try to actually get it scheduled with Empower America at the same time. Or if you want to talk to me first and we can kind of walk through like what your current situation is and then schedule the phone call, we could do that, whatever works for you. I just want you to know that you have a resource in Empowering America. This is my first time working with a debt elimination company. I've had other companies approach me and they either did not work with my clients in the states that I worked in, or I never really liked them. So I really like this company. I think it'll really be a good resource. So I will be hosting another webinar on November 15th, and I'll be talking about how do you then turn your debt into wealth. So it's a very cool, unique topic. You'll be getting emails from me about that as well. But thank you everyone for joining. I definitely appreciate you for joining me today.